Got a very special broadcast for everybody today at 5. We are back with the newly revealed Internet Vegas investigator extraordinaire, John Cullen. John, everybody's ready to have a look at you. The somewhat shy, there he is. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason. Good to be here once again. Thank you.
Yeah, you've been a frequent guest, and now we are announcing for everybody today, John, that this is a new regular show that you and I will be doing every Friday at this time. For the introduction, the premiere episode, we're doing it here on YouTube and Facebook and Periscope and DLive and VK.com and all the different platforms that we are on, but it's going to become a regular show that will be available exclusively to sponsors on Patreon.com. And I apologize, I've yet to create a bug that features your Patreon address, but I'm going to show it to everybody right now. People can log on to patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and you can become a sponsor of the John Cullen Patreon page. You're going to get access to this show every Friday, as well as John's exclusive podcast that's available on Patreon. Why don't you tell everybody else what they're going to get when they sponsor you on Patreon, John?
Getting ready to launch a new series. I'm going to go back to the original videos from the John Cullen YouTube page. And starting with the very earliest videos, we're going to go through them together with the Patreon supporters, sort of in a director's commentary kind of manner. I don't know if you've ever done that on a DVD, where you watch the movie along with the director, and the director kind of tells you what they were thinking as they were making the movie. So I'm going to be launching a series.
Great.
Right, so I'm going to walk through this content, and the old videos from October, November, December 2017, I'm going to be relaunching those videos, but only to Patreon clients, to Patreon supporters. So this is really for the students of the shooting, the people that really want to dig in and sort of understand the process. Now, these early videos have a number of false positives, because back then we didn't have the body cams. We were attempting to synchronize footage in a manner just kind of going by audio. Once we had the body cam footage, that changed everything. But
and that changed
in the early
everything
days, it was
because you had time code there with it and all that, and the idea is when you can sync something up to that master track, then everything kind of came into sync.
Exactly. Then we knew what we were looking at. We knew exactly what time it was. And the repeated observations that we had from multiple cameras, that was the phenomenon.
Nice. So that'll be a good opportunity for people who are really hungry to know the truth about what happened in Las Vegas on October 1st, 2017, and people who've been watching your channel, the John E. Hoover YouTube channel, which people can still go to and look at all those videos totally free of charge. We should have right now a live simulcast of this broadcast on the John E. Hoover channel, and we do. We've got 69 people watching. Hello to everyone who's watching on John E. Hoover, and of course, welcome to all the Crowdsource the Truth viewers. John, today we're going to explore something that I didn't even realize you had already covered. There was a lot of talk yesterday about Jeff Bezos, the owner of the Washington Post, traveling to Istanbul, Turkey to get justice for Jamal Khashoggi. Some may argue that justice was metered out, albeit in a Wahhabi fashion, on October 2nd, 2018. Now, I should temper that comment. I don't think anybody deserves to be tortured, but if it is correct that Jamal Khashoggi participated in a conspiracy to attempt to assassinate the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, I think you kind of gotta, know that if you live by the assassination, you're likely to die by assassination, and don't mess around with that stuff if you don't want to get chopped up. The thing that really struck me is that, that embassy in Istanbul, it opens at 9 a.m. Every morning on weekdays, except for Fridays, I would presume. And 9 a.m. on October the 2nd in Istanbul would be 11 p.m. in Las Vegas, Nevada, October 1st, making that murder of Jamal Khashoggi essentially take place on the one-year anniversary. What do you think? Was this a retaliatory strike meant as a message to show the conspirators that they know what's up?
Well, we've seen footage of a team of interrogators, I'll put it, getting off of a jet in Turkey to interrogate Jamal Khashoggi, right? I assume they knew he was coming into the embassy to have an appointment to do these papers to get married again, I guess, or something is what he was up to.
Right.
But you know, is that ironic? Yes. Is it a coincidence? It's hard to say, right? I mean, what you're pointing out, let's put a real fine point on it for everybody. 8 a.m. in Istanbul, 8 a.m. in Istanbul is 10 p.m. October 1st.
Right.
So if they open the gates of that embassy at 8:30 a.m., that's 10:30 p.m. Las Vegas time. It's exactly 1 year to the hour of the attack that Jamal Khashoggi said goodbye to this world. Now, is that a coincidence? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
But let's back it up a minute, because there might be a lot of people watching who haven't seen all of your videos, who maybe haven't seen a lot of the videos that we've done together. You first became known to me when I was watching a video on your John E. Hoover YouTube channel, which just came up in my feed because I was doing a lot of stuff with Vegas, the way a lot of people get introduced to YouTubers. And you had introduced this notion that unknown helicopters were flying in the air, strobe lights that did not match the movements of a jet. We all know that McCarran Airport is very close to the venue. It's right behind the venue. They did not match any of the helicopter transponders that were recorded on Flight Radar 24. So they were these sort of ghost helicopters that, as more and more footage has come out, you've done some incredibly complex analysis, triangulating different video angles of these floating strobe lights, providing what I feel is really prima facie evidence of helicopters that have no radio transponders. And give us the sort of 2-minute overview of what the general hypothesis is for people who maybe aren't familiar.
It begins with there does not appear to be evidence of gunfire coming from 32-135. So it started with, in the early days, we had footage from Raymond Page. And Raymond Page is on Las Vegas Boulevard, and he's filming directly at the Mandalay Bay. And you hear rapid fire machine gun fire, but we don't see anything coming from the window. So I isolated that, I stabilized it, didn't see anything. And so I started thinking, well, wait a second, something's up here. If there's not a shooter in that room shooting down at the crowd, where are the shooters? And I went to Google Earth and started looking around for rooftops. And it was as I was looking at the rooftops that I realized it could be helicopters. And then, sure enough, I started seeing lights in the sky. And lights in the sky typically don't fly around by themselves. They need some sort of winged object behind them. Right. So, unless they're seagulls with headlamps.
Yeah.
Right. So what we see are clearly helicopters in the airspace. Now, people who are not familiar with my work will say things like, well, McCarran Airport is right next door. And that's absolutely true. And that's what made this so unbelievably tedious. So I guess what I'm kind of known for is using an online tool called Flight Radar 24 that anybody can go to their website, flightradar24.com. And you can see historic recordings. So if you want to see all the air traffic at LaGuardia yesterday, you can do that. You can go see all the air traffic at Charles de Gaulle a week ago. And I use that tool to view the goings on at McCarran. In fact, you can pull up McCarran right now. If you want to watch McCarran live, you can do that right now.
Yeah. I hope it
Take a
doesn't
quick
hit
peek. I'm gonna
our.
take. I'm gonna. Yeah. I'm gonna turn off my camera for a sec.
Okay. So now we got McCarran. Hit the search. People can, this is just an open source tool that anybody can go to. I wasn't really prepared to look through it, so, don't worry about this so much. Just keep going with what you were saying. There we
So
go.
using the tool, what I was able to do was effectively track what jets are taking off at what time, what Tor helicopters are taking off at what time, when do the police arrive at the scene, and it's all there at this website, Flight Radar. Now, because it happened 2 years ago, you can't access that data so easily now. You have to become like a platinum business member, and it's rather expensive. I think it's $500 or something.
Whoa.
But I recorded it the week it happened, right? So I was there looking at this stuff. I got tipped off to this by the same guy that Shepard Ambellas basically got tipped off to this. Shepard and I both saw this guy's work. His name is Truth Tracker on YouTube. And he was the first guy to kind of point out this tool. And when I saw what he was doing with it, I realized, this tool is invaluable. I got to get one of these memberships.
Yeah.
So I got a membership, started recording, and then started studying. And because of my background in manufacturing and Six Sigma and stuff like that, I started doing baselining. I started looking at other Sunday nights. I looked at the 6 Sunday nights previous, and the 6 Saturday nights previous, and the 6 Friday nights previous. And I kept doing that to study what does it look like on a typical night? What's going on? When is Sundance leaving? When is Maverick leaving? How many aircraft does Maverick go with? How many aircraft does Sundance go with? And they're the two big tour companies that are based at the airport across from Mandalay Bay. So I studied it, I baselined it, and then we look at the video footage, the eyewitness firsthand footage, and we see aircraft that don't appear on flight radar. My hypothesis is that these aircraft that we see never appear on flight radar. They never turn on their transponders. They're not spoofing. None of that is happening. They come in, they do their business, and they leave, and there's no transponders on at any time. So that's sort of, for people who are not familiar with my work, that's sort of what I'm known for doing is tracking which were the jets, which were the aircraft, the helicopters, and cross-referencing reference footage from the Las Vegas Metro Police Department with eyewitness footage that we found on YouTube.
Yeah, and I think we should also reiterate, it's not just a matter of looking at some dots on a video and looking at a website with radar data. You went so deep on this, you discovered the U.S. Army program to assist Boeing in selling AH-6I helicopters to the Saudi Arabian National Guard. You even made a video that shows the General Muth talking about how he's training the Saudi National Guard, and you discovered that these helicopters are manufactured in Mesa, Arizona at a Boeing facility there that is right across the street from something called MD Helicopters, which I believe was a spin-off of McDonnell Douglas. McDonnell Douglas merged with Boeing, so there's this whole helicopter outpost there in Mesa, which is certainly close enough to Las Vegas that there's a lot of ways that a small fleet of helicopters could pretty clandestinely be transported from Mesa to Las Vegas. And when we say clandestine, you could fold the rotors back, put each helicopter an 18-wheeler, drive it a few hours to some warehouse in Vegas, roll the thing out of a parking lot in a warehouse, out of a warehouse into a parking lot in just a few minutes, and have it up in the air, and nobody would even know how it got there. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Or you could simply fly them from point A to point B.
Could do
have
that.
a refueling. Yeah, you could have a refueling location. So assume they arrived in the Vegas area at about 8:30 or 9 p.m. at a warehouse, let's say 5 or 8 miles away, refueled, and they're ready to go. They're mission ready at 9:30. Keep in mind that these aircraft that we see that are unaccounted for, they are only on the scene for 11 minutes, and then they're gone. And the question is, well, why did they leave? Were they afraid of Maverick? Were they afraid of the 7 Maverick helicopters? Were they afraid of N911WY that arrives on the scene? We don't know. We think they had air superiority, so why would they leave? And one potential explanation would be because of fuel. In order to get back to Mesa, Arizona,
Well, how
they
about they
only
just
had
don't want
11 to
people
15
to
minutes.
see them? They're trying to do a clandestine op. They don't want anybody to know what's up. I would think the idea is you go up,
That too.
you
Yes.
do your deal,
Yes.
you go back down and land, and they're out of there before anybody knows. To me, the notion of stowing the helicopter, because I think I saw in some of that Boeing stuff that they showed it can be put right into a truck. I mean, the
Oh,
purpose,
certainly. Oh,
yeah,
certainly.
the
Yeah.
purpose of these helicopters is that it's a pretty stealth type helicopter. It's quieter than a normal helicopter. It's smaller. It can go into a truck, so you can sort of insert it somewhere, do what it needs to do. You could park it overnight in a truck in a warehouse and nobody would even know it's there. Drive the truck out of town the next day. Nobody's looking for that. They're all preoccupied with this incredible destruction that's happened at the concert. And there are other points that you've put together as well that augment this theory. I don't want to go into the details of some of the things that people have done to try to suppress this theory, but you know, the basic idea is that there was a high value target there in Vegas and could have been Mohammed bin Salman. We're not saying that Jason Buff, the guy walking through the Tropicana, was Mohammed bin Salman, but he could have been there somewhere in Vegas. The attack on the concert would be a distraction from a high value target kill. And it also would have been a major smear on the then immature Trump presidency. This was a 9/11 style terrorist incident, and it certainly doesn't reflect well on Donald Trump's FBI. It's just, you know, it's a black mark on the Trump presidency. We have been misdirected by malicious social engineers to believe that the Crown Prince was in Jeddah or something on October 1st, that he was traveling to Moscow or something like that. This is not true. On October 3rd, 2017, there was an article saying that the Saudi King Abdulaziz would go to Russia that Thursday. So he wasn't there until the 5th or something like that. I've seen a live streamed video from RT of King Abdulaziz arriving in Moscow. And it was such a big deal because it was the first visit by a Saudi royal to Moscow in a long time. So there was no evidence that we've seen that any member of the Saudi Arabian royal family was in Moscow on October 1st. And in fact, this blatantly false statement made by an obvious social engineer led to a bunch of crowdsourced research that pointed out a really conspicuous hole in the reporting of the whereabouts of Mohammed bin Salman on October 1st, so we don't know. Now, the question we're asking today, John, is, was Jamal Khashoggi murdered for his role in the shooting? And it's an interesting question to ask. What can you tell us about this?
Well, about a year ago when Jamal Khashoggi was murdered, it was October 2nd here in the States. It was actually it was October 1st here in the States when he was murdered. It was the morning of October 2nd in Turkey.
Right.
And so the first thing when we heard about it, we heard, you know, it was supposed to be this brutal chopping them up kind of thing. First thing I want to know is, you know, well, why would you do that to the guy? You know, he must have done something. What would he have done? What might he have done to warrant such a brutal death? So I put together a video a couple days after the killing to sort of dig into Jamal Khashoggi and find out Is this guy a revered journalist? Is this an award-winning journalist who has multiple journalism awards, or is this a guy with a background that's maybe a little bit different, maybe than, I don't know, the Washington Post would lead you to believe? I don't know.
Right.
Let's take a look.
Well, they would lead you, Washington Post would lead you to believe that Khashoggi was murdered by the Saudi regime because he was an outspoken dissident. And, even Adam Schiff, the reprehensible Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi kicked off their, Trump-Ukraine Gate press conference just the other day by honoring Jamal Khashoggi. And this is a guy, for people who don't know, Jamal Khashoggi was a Mujahideen jihadi back in the 1980s in Afghanistan. He can be seen in a photograph, I'm showing it right now, holding a rocket-propelled grenade launcher and hanging out with the Mujahideen. That's the Army of God, and this is a ragtag group of fighters from around the world who assembled in Afghanistan and were, at the time, funded by the U.S. government to fight the Soviet Union. And out of this group, we're told, Osama bin Laden merged with the Egyptian Islamic Jihad when Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri was expelled from Egypt. And this is where Al-Qaeda was formed. I believe the word Al-Qaeda means the base and technically referred to Afghanistan itself, but this is a guy who was there in a crucible of terrorism that is certainly connected to events including 9/11. So I'm not so sure that this guy is this innocent journalist that we're being told by the Washington Post, which is a frequent source of lies anyway.
Well, I think there's a couple of irrefutable facts, right? We know where he used to work. We know who he used to work for. And maybe, I don't know, do we have a couple clips queued up here? Maybe we can share one or two of these little tidbits with the audience as far as some of these findings. Because a lot of this, you're not going to see this on MSNBC. You're not going to see this on CNN.
Right. You've got it on the screen
this
share,
is the
right?
other side of the story. I beg your pardon?
You've got the screen share there, right?
I see it on my end. Yeah.
Okay.
It says, has anyone asked? Yeah.
Right. Do you want sound on that? Oh, it's going to get the video ding. Okay. No, we won't monetize this video. It's all right. It doesn't monetize anyway.
You can turn the sound down just a little bit, and I'll talk over.
Right.
Turn the sound down, and I'll speak over it. Yeah, there you go. So what do we really know about Jamal Khashoggi?
Today we have a very important guest with us, Jamal Khashoggi, the very prominent Saudi journalist. Welcome, Mr. Jamal. How are you?
Ahlan wa sahlan. Thank you for having me here. But he is also maintaining the old ways of repressive system. Actually, he's expanding at that. And he's totally, he doesn't need it. There is no opposition to him. I just don't understand, why does he have to go?
So you identified...
Well, he doesn't have an opposition, really. The people whom he's arresting
You can hit pause.
are not an opposition.
Yeah. You've identified all these news articles about these sort of splintered factions within the Saudi Arabian royal family, right?
Well, and this article in particular, excuse me, if there is a smoking gun, as far as this Saudi theory, and the Saudi hypothesis, understand, this is sort of the second stage of the hypotheses, right? Hypothesis A, the first stage, is that it's an aerial attack being carried out by helicopters, right? Once I got to that point and I came to that conclusion, and for me, I had enough evidence to feel comfortable that that was in fact what I was seeing here. Mm-hmm. The next step was, well, who in the world would be able to do this? Is this our own people? Is this a false flag? Did a bunch of FBI guys who took the oath, did a bunch of CIA guys who took the oath, get in a helicopter one night and go shoot a bunch of girls in the face? Is that what happened? Or could this be a group of people who are a little bit better known for this type of heinous activity, this type of heinous behavior? And so as I started, is it North Korea? Where in the world is North Korea going to get helicopters
And how
in
do
the
they
Vegas
get into
area?
the U.S.? Right.
Exactly. And, who else could it possibly be? I don't think we've got that tough a relationship with Russia right now that they would pull a stunt like that. I don't think we have a relationship with China that they would pull a stunt like that. So who in the world is that bold and brazen and might have access to helicopters in a 250 to 500 mile radius?
And as you're talking, John, it occurs to me that the Saudis would be uniquely emboldened by the U.S. response to 9/11, obviously the most horrendous terrorist attack and one of the most horrendous events in human history. And there's a lot of evidence that Saudis were involved, financing that came from Bandar bin Sultan and 15 of the 19 alleged hijackers being Saudi Arabian. Yet nothing was done. Saudi Arabian families, the bin Laden family and others were the only ones allowed to fly the next day. So the Saudis sort of know that they can do whatever they want and the United States will seemingly do nothing.
And exactly. And therein we have a big problem. If the audience is not familiar with 28pages.org,
right,
it's important that everybody go there. www.28pages or the28pages.org. And this is the declassified report about September 11th that mentions quite a few Saudis.
Now let me pause you a second, John, because we've got viewers in the comments who are saying Saudis or Israel. And anytime I don't say something negative about Israel, I get criticized and accused of being a Mossad agent. There is obviously evidence that Israelis participated in 9/11. There were the guys that were arrested, the dancing Israelis that were, photographing the event from New Jersey, who were arrested, who have been on the news, who have Mossad ties. Now, I don't know what that means. That could mean that Mossad hires them to do black bag jobs or whatever. And we've got statements from, Netanyahu and other people talking about how the effects of 9/11 are going to benefit Israel. That's a separate conversation. If we have evidence that Israel is being trained in Mesa, Arizona, if we have testimony from a U.S. Army general talking about how the Saudi Arabian National Guard, or I should say if there's an Israeli National Guard that's being trained by the U.S. military and having helicopters stored, we could explore that, but there is no evidence to support that. So simply throwing out the comment that maybe it was Israel doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right, so that takes us back to that Guardian article you showed 5 minutes ago. That's the manifesto. That article was read by over 2 million Saudis, and that's the manifesto from the grandson of Ibn Saud saying, we're not happy with this appointment of MBS. And keep in mind, so this is from the Guardian, and this was published in September of 2015, so this was 2 years before the attack. And if you read this, and you take the time to go through this, this is effectively the cousins of MBS saying that they're not happy with the decision. Now, keep in mind that a number of these guys were pushed aside. They had been the crown prince at one point. So right. King Fahd's children. So anybody who is the son of King Fahd thought they might be the next king.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the wealth. Go ahead.
We should also probably say, when I hear cousins, people, you're thinking about your own cousins. How could a cousin do this? A lot of these royal families, there's different mothers. There's a lot of jealousy, rivalry, and certainly whoever becomes the king of Saudi Arabia commands not only one of the largest fortunes in the world, but, if what we're saying is correct, you do whatever you want to the United States and have no retaliation, you're one of the most powerful individuals on the planet. So there's a tremendous amount of rivalry, and the notion that these guys would kill each other to get that is not remote at all.
And a number of these guys thought that they were in line individually to be the next king of Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Mansour bin Mukran's father was crown prince. Mohammed bin Nayef was crown prince. Fahd's kid, Abdulaziz bin Fahd, also, I believe, at one point may have been crown prince. So all these guys think they're going to be the next king, and meanwhile, Al-Walid thinks he should be king because he's the most successful businessman in the kingdom. He's the wealthiest guy that's not sitting on the throne. And he is also one of the grandsons of Ibn Saud, right? And he is named here in the letter from the youngest, Mukran, right? So they're mentioning them by names in here.
Should we read this
specifically
whole thing?
Sure. The letters in Arabic calling for the overthrow of the king have been read more than 2 million times. The letters call on the 13 surviving sons of Ibn Saud, specifically Prince Talal, Turkey, and Ahmed bin Abdulaziz. Well, Turkey and Talal play a huge role in Jamal Khashoggi's life. Isn't that interesting?
Yep.
So most of the folks in the United States hear about Jamal Khashoggi as a reporter working for the Washington Post. And that's what he's been doing most recently. He moved to America. I forget if it's the month before. You'll see it in the video. But he used to be affiliated with some pretty interesting characters here. So, yeah, why don't we let the video roll, and you'll see a little bit more of that here.
Sure.
Yeah, you can turn the audio down, too, a little bit if you like.
So he needs to get away from this behavior of the past, repression and closure of breathing space for media, for intellectuals, by embracing Arab Spring, respecting people's wishes in change and democracy.
You can pause it right there.
People are asking, John, what's the motive?
Out at Arab Spring.
Yeah. What's the motive for this shooting? I mean, I say again, the motive could be as simple as a distraction from a high-value target assassination, a smear to the Trump campaign. And, these are radical terrorists. We've heard elsewhere that the actual soldiers in the Saudi Arabian National Guard are not Saudi Arabian, they're Pakistani. So there's a lot of countries elsewhere in the world that have a lot of reasons
That's a big leap. That's a big leap, Jason. There's something like 250,000 soldiers in the Saudi Arabian National Guard. To say that they're all Pakistani is too big a generalization.
That's what John Kiriakou said.
I have great respect for John, and I'm sure that there are plenty of Pakistanis in the Saudi Arabian National Guard if he says that. But to say that they're all Pakistani, I find that a bit hard to believe, given the numbers, just the sheer numbers. It's literally like 250,000. It might even be as high as 400,000 now in the
huge army.
It's tremendous. The other thing that most people don't understand is that Saudi Arabia's military spending is third on the planet behind the United States and China.
Wow.
Saudi Arabia spends more on the military than Russia. They spend more on their military than the United Kingdom, more on their military than Germany. Don't believe me, look it up. Look up military spending by country, and what you'll see is that Saudi Arabia has been the third largest spender, so to speak, on military. And so, doing business with them has been good for us. We're number one, China's number two, Saudi Arabia's number three.
Wow.
So they're spending more than Russia. If they're spending more than Russia, I think they're all right, right? I think if they need help, they've got Jared's number. Give us a ring if you can't figure out how to start those things. Give us a call. But
the petrodollar,
you got plenty of gear.
Petrodollar arrangement also allows for the United States to defend Saudi Arabia. So in addition to their own military spending, there's a lot of assistance that they get from the United States. And I just want to say, John, for people who are concerned about my interrupting you, you're using a VPN and we've got an audio delay, so it's sometimes difficult for the conversation to flow normally. I apologize if I'm stepping on any of your responses.
No. For me, it sounds fine. So Great. It doesn't sound like you're stepping on me. So maybe they're hearing a little delay or something like that. So it's fine. So
we've got now a lot of indicators that Jamal Khashoggi could very well have been a major component of a conspiracy to assassinate the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. And I also want to reiterate that I'm not advocating for Mohammed bin Salman. I'm not taking a side in any kind of Saudi Arabian royal family war. We're just making observations based on things these guys have said and trying to arrive at a hypothesis of why this might have happened. Because you, John, have identified in the videos that people can see on the John E. Hoover YouTube channel and also on your Patreon channel that people should go to right now, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen. People can see these videos that you've put together, which indicate, boy, I forgot what I was going to say they indicate because I was on such a roll promoting the channels, but, well, I screwed that up. Sorry, John. You got a lot of evidence on there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is evidence-based journalism. It's opinion-based journalism. So I share my opinion based on the evidence. Right. I am accruing evidence. Right now, there's over 250 videos that I've published on the channel. As I said earlier, the older videos I'm going to start to re-release on Patreon only with this type of dialogue where we're talking, looking at the video, and I'm going to do that with these older films that I did.
Yeah, and it looks
the
like
newer content is
nice gear. There's some nice gear that people can get also if they become sponsors. You get these shirts that show their support for John Cullen and his investigation.
Yeah, we have a Teespring shop, so if people want to wear a We Are John Cullen shirt, and John, just so that everybody knows, John Cullen is a nom de plume, a lot like J.K. Rowling. Mm-hmm. John Cullen is the Coast Guardsman that caught the Nazis on the beach in Long Island. So.
Right, and people are asking why you're wearing sunglasses. John is still trying to be low-key. He's showing himself to us because it's what he's chosen to do, to come out of the shadows. But this type of stuff that we're investigating, John, this is the type of thing that people generally don't want coming out. You know, we look at somebody like Al-Walid, we look at somebody like Jeff Bezos. All these super billionaires seem to own major media consortiums, whether it's Twitter or an Arab language news network or one of the largest newspapers in the world. These guys are controlling the narrative first by putting out the news and paying all the people that work for them tremendous sums to make the types of things that you and I talk about seem like something that people shouldn't pay attention to. What I was going to say that you're pointing out in all those evidentiary videos on Patreon and YouTube is that subsequent to the shooting, the Las Vegas Metro PD has released a lot of body camera footage, and you have gone through a huge amount of that, including shots that show the windows at Stephen Paddock's room are not broken. So again, when I say prima facie evidence, what I'm saying is until someone can show us a stronger piece of evidence that shows that bullets came out of that window, how do we explain people getting shot with a window not broken? Certainly the bullets didn't come from that window. You couple that with the research that you've done of the autopsies, the head wounds moving downward at sometimes 45, 60 degrees, the hotel being 12 or 13 degrees. None of this stuff matches up. So this is not just some unsubstantiated theory that you've pulled out of the sky, pardon the pun, and made up. This is something that you've been researching for well over a year, 2 years now, since the event occurred. And there are so many points of evidence that you have that we absolutely have to run this thing down all the way. And I think this has become the strongest theory available.
Well, and again, when you look at what happened to Jamal Khashoggi, why would it be so brutal? Was MBS trying to send a message to the rest of the family? Did something happen in between October 1st at Las Vegas and Jamal Khashoggi being killed? Did something else happen that the American public is not that aware of? I don't know if you've got another cue point on that video, but you might want to hop to one of those next things that one of those timestamps I sent you.
Let's just
So
see
we can
here.
pull that up.
Well, we've already got, okay, yeah. So, yeah, of course, what you're talking about is the anti-corruption incarceration of a number of top Saudis, which, you know, here in the United States, that piece of news sort of came and went and nobody really thought much of it. But Al-Walid bin Talal was one of the individuals to be incarcerated in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel of all places, which is a strange place to be imprisoned, but still, if you're getting tortured in there, it's no fun, I'm sure.
Exactly. So one of the questions that we asked was, who did Jamal Khashoggi work for before he worked for Jeff Bezos? And was he really a journalist, right? And as I started to research him and his background, I found out that he worked for Prince Turki Al Faisal, and he was the head of the GIP. The General Intelligence Presidency is the CIA equivalent in Saudi Arabia. So Khashoggi works for the head of the Saudi CIA. He's the number 2 guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now that sounds like an award-winning journalist to you, or does that sound like a spook? To me, that sounds like a spook. You know, call me old-fashioned, right? All right. So then we have this article: Saudi Prince Turki Al Faisal confirms the abduction of Saudi princes. Let that run, and let's take a look at the date on this article. So this is the head of the General Intelligence Presidency confirms that they've been abducting Saudi princes from Europe. And now let's check out the date. And this is Jamal Khashoggi's boss. Okay, and we skip forward. Let's look at the date that these guys are scooping up princes across Europe. When did that happen?
October 10th.
Oh, October 10th, 9 days after the attack.
Yeah.
All right, so 9 days after the Las Vegas shooting, the head of the Saudi CIA is scooping up princes across Europe. And he confirms it. He doesn't even deny it. What for? Now, this is before the Night of 1,000 Swords.
And the Night of 1,000 Swords is what? Where they're imprisoned in the hotel?
Right. And I don't know if everybody knows the story behind that. The MBS, it's brilliant. They were going to give Saudi citizenship to that robot, Sophia.
Yeah.
That was what the invitation said. You're coming for that, and then they locked the doors and arrested everybody. All right, so this guy goes off to Iran, right? So you've got a whole bunch of princes like running for their lives, getting scooped up. This guy, who's the grandson of King Fahd, defects to Iran, their archenemy, and this is all happening in the same time frame. Turki bin Mohammed.
I mean, these are not coincidences. These are related. In my mind, this is very clear.
Mm-hmm. And so then they were saying that Prince Abdulaziz bin Fahd, he's another one with a super yacht, was killed. Right? Mm-hmm. So we started saying, well, wait a second. Maybe this is bigger than corruption. We've got all these princes that are getting rounded up across Europe. Right? They're being detained. Is this bigger than a corruption issue? Is there something, worse? 2 weeks before the Las Vegas shooting, Jamal Khashoggi leaves Saudi Arabia.
That's interesting.
I
didn't even know that.
Never returns. And 2 weeks before the shooting is when he came to go work for the Washington Post.
Really? Wow.
Yes. So now who else who else did Jamal Khashoggi? And by the way, Rahul and Jamal are the same. So based on whether you're in Saudi Arabia or Turkey or different countries say Rahul and some say Jamal. It's the same. So so Khashoggi worked for our dear friend, the owner of the part owner of the Four Seasons,
Right.
Prince Alwaleed bin Talal. So now we know that Khashoggi worked for bin Talal. He was the number 2 guy at the Saudi General Intelligence Presidency. Sound like a journalist? Now, if Al-Waleed is in fact, tied into all this, might Al-Waleed and Khashoggi have had something to do with it?
Yeah.
And might Al-Waleed, while he was being hung upside down by, Eric Prince and the guys, so as they were having a conversation with him, did he give up Khashoggi?
Right.
Right? Did he look at Ali bin Talal and you say, how well is this guy going to stand up to torture? You know, they beat the bottom of his feet with a garden hose for 3 minutes. And what do you think? Is he going to give up Khashoggi?
Yeah. Well,
Rahul Khashoggi also interviewed Osama bin Laden. You talked about that. He was a member of the Mujahideen, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that he interviewed Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, twice. So the question is, might he have been complicit? If MBS has evidence that Jamal Khashoggi was complicit and helped organize, finance, what have you, this assassination attempt, now all of a sudden just chopping him up into pieces seems so brutal. The other thing that I don't think people are aware of is what happened in April of 2018 in Riyadh. So this was after the Night of 1,000 Swords. It was after Al-Waleed was released. And I think that's a big deal. And this was in Riyadh, April 2018. There was supposedly another attack, another assassination attempt. And shortly after that, Mohammed bin Salman wasn't seen for almost, I think, 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Nobody saw him anywhere.
Speculation that he'd been shot.
That's right. And in fact, I think we might have that. I think we might have a cue point for that in the video as well some point.
Yeah, I'm looking for that. Yeah, there were several palace attacks where people drive-by type shooting things. I think we've got it right here. Well, this is also an important tweet from Trump where he is expressing his support for the king and the crown prince. I mean, these are things that are sort of spoken perhaps in an unspoken manner.
So this is Saturday, April 21st. And again, what's important to this is 6 months before Jamal Khashoggi is killed. It's after the Night of 1,000 Swords. So they've already rounded everybody up, supposedly. Al-Waleed bin Talal's already been released, and then this happens. You may want to turn the audio up for this. This we want to hear.
Sounds like Vegas. Yeah, I mean, you raise an interesting point, John. I would want to ask the victims of the shooting how they feel about someone who planned it getting chopped up. I think they would agree with you that it might be not an entirely inappropriate fate for somebody that would do that. You made a video about a young woman, she's a mother, lost her eye. And
that's right. That's right.
Other victims who can't eat, can't walk, their lives are destroyed.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. There are quadriplegics. There are paraplegics. There are women that were shot in the face. There's a woman who lost an eye. There's a cop from California who was shot in the head. I mean, it's brutal. There is some brutal stuff.
Yeah.
And, even the folks who weren't shot, being shot at, running for your life, this is America. We're not,
Yeah.
This isn't Somalia. All right? So,
well, I don't think
that's
anybody
the
in
problem.
Somalia should be shot at and run for their life, but I get what you mean. There's chaos there, warlords running the place. We don't want that kind of stuff going on over here.
No.
And it's a real major concern that this happened. So it's strange to me that Adam Schiff and people like that would advocate for Jamal Khashoggi and try to make it seem like he's some kind of nice guy when he's actually a terrorist.
It just strikes me that they don't scratch the surface. Nobody does the work anymore. Nobody digs in and asks the tough questions. Nobody looks at the counterpoint and says, might MBS have had a reason to do this?
To chop him up,
Now,
you mean?
I don't know. I don't know. So, and again, I'm not saying that Jamal Khashoggi deserved it, but I think we know a little bit more about the guy now than we did 30, 40 minutes ago, right? I mean, the fact that he's the number 2 guy at the Saudi CIA, the fact that he used to work for Al-Walid bin Talal, that appears to, Al-Walid bin Talal's not been in the United States since he was released. I predicted that, while he was still in detention. I said if he ever gets out, he's never coming back to the United States.
Why is that? You
And
think
he
they'd
has not
arrest him
yet.
on sight?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Trump hates him. He
No
hates
doubt.
Trump. He bought the Trump Princess yacht, didn't he?
He did, and that I think is the insinuation in his tweet where he says, I bailed you out 2, maybe 3 times. The insinuation is that by buying the Trump Princess, he bailed him out. And an interesting twist here is that the Trump Princess used to be Adnan Khashoggi's yacht.
Right.
So the Khashoggi family came into their wealth because of the senior patriarch Khashoggi was the personal physician to Ibn Saud. So, Grandpa Khashoggi was Ibn Saud's personal physician, and that's where all this wealth came from. Interestingly, also, MBS is known for having purchased the most expensive house in the world, and that I think is in France. That house was built by, it's either Ahmed or Emmet Khashoggi, and that's the $300 million palace that MBS purchased in France. That was built by another Khashoggi. So, and in fact, it's just fascinating. The Khashoggis and the Saud family have had business dealings for years. But when Jamal Khashoggi, Raul, starts talking about Arab Spring and democracy, you can't advocate democracy in Saudi Arabia. It's a royalty, right? So if you're the prince, if you're the king, and your grandpa's friend's cousin is advocating democracy.
Yeah, he's talking about
and
overthrowing
then,
the monarchy.
Absolutely. I mean, Arab Spring sounds like a soap. I remember Irish Spring when I was a kid. Irish Spring soap. Arab Spring. It sounds so lovely. But the truth is, at the end of an Arab Spring, MBS ends up at the gallows. Right, and he's
It's also, I think, important to point out, John, that the Arab Spring is one of these like George Soros type marketing names for basically a funded coup where they just come in there and it's really not democracy. It's just some other dictator taking over.
That's exactly right, and you said it better than I did, and I agree with you completely. So, if he's advocating this and he's making it sound so, it's perfectly normal. And the House of Saud has to be looking at each other going, is he out of his mind?
Right.
What is he, and if they have evidence that he was complicit, maybe they cut him some slack and that's why he wasn't arrested, but then they find out that he had something to do with this thing in April in Riyadh. I don't know, but it sure would explain cutting off his fingers, cutting off his toes.
I think they cut
right?
off more
Rather than
that.
just for no reason, right? You don't do that to somebody just for no reason.
And frankly, even if they just
done,
wanted to kill him, they could shoot the guy and throw him in a dumpster. They made a
Right.
point of
Right.
really brutally taking him out so that everybody would know.
Right. So there has to be a rationale for that. Why would you do that? Like you said, if they wanted to take him out, they didn't have to send a whole plane load of guys. They didn't have to send the whole crew. They could have sent one badass and he'd be gone.
Get a little slow down there, John.
Right. So they were. I'm certain they filmed it.
Sorry, we lost you there. You're saying they filmed him getting chopped up. Yeah, I think that's known.
I'm speculating.
Oh, I'm sure they did. I mean,
know.
any kind of government installation like that is, first of all, you can't even go into an office building anymore without there being video cameras everywhere. But any kind of high security facility like that is definitely going to have lots of video surveillance. Now, just the other day, Jeff Bezos attended a vigil at the Saudi consulate where Khashoggi was murdered a year ago. Now, that seems strange to me. He's the owner of the Washington Post, but I don't know how involved he is in the day-to-day. Do people realize that Jeff Bezos attended the Bilderberg meeting and that his ownership of the Washington Post may go well beyond simple business interests? The Washington Post, remember, is where Woodward and Bernstein broke the story about Watergate, which I think if you look back on it now, the Washington Post is much more of a propaganda machine than it is a news outlet. They are frequently publishing falsehoods, and they've been a huge opponent of President Trump, as Al-Walid bin Talal is. So if Khashoggi is on his crew, it makes sense that he would work for the Washington Post. The CIA doesn't seem to be a big fan of Donald Trump either. We've had John Brennan all over the place talking about treason. He should be talking about himself when it comes to treason, but these guys are desperate to get rid of Trump. And you also might recall Trump was interviewed on September 11th, 2001, saying that he was familiar with the construction of the World Trade Center and that he felt that there had to be supplemental explosives that brought the building down. And I thought I recall Trump saying he was going to reveal who was behind 9/11. If you're in this crew of Saudis who are funding it, even if they hired Israelis, even if they cooperated with Mossad, the Saudi guys that were behind the money are going to be pretty worried about a U.S. president that's interested in exposing and revealing that. There was one more segment in the video here that you wanted to share. Should we do that, John?
Sure. Yeah. Let's go ahead.
Okay,
and again, you can turn the sound down. I'll talk over it.
Sure. All right, let's do that.
So this was what I just said a moment ago. So in other words, if in fact MBS has evidence that he was complicit, would it be so crazy to react the way that he did, right? Mm-hmm. They have covered up the Las Vegas shooting. They have covered up this attack in Riyadh. They said that was a drone flying overhead. So if MBS has evidence that Khashoggi is partially responsible for some coup d'etat attempt or two, right? Mm-hmm. Does this seem so crazy? Is the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, ruthless if he was the one who was funding, helping to organize, helping to coordinate what happened in Las Vegas?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think he probably was an intelligence operative, officer, whatever it might be. I think he was a propagandist. I think he was operating in the United States. I think he was operating all over the place. And I think, as I said, when you plan assassinations, don't be surprised if you get assassinated yourself. I don't have a lot of sympathy for the guy. And in fact, I'm pretty disturbed that a lot of people are saying he's a journalist. And also, let me ask you this. Why do we care so much about this journalist, but no one's saying anything about Julian Assange? That seems like a guy
Exactly.
who's a little bit more focused on doing good for the people of the world. And I'm not able to find this article right now, but, oh wait, you know what? I might have, well, I can't find the article easily right now, but there was an article that said that Al-Walid bin Talal had made a statement on Fox News where Al-Walid was saying that Mohammed bin Salman had nothing to do with Jamal Khashoggi's death, which sounds a lot to me like a guy who's been through the rehabilitation program and is now talking the talk and keeping himself in line.
It's a very effective program that Eric Prince runs over there. Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a big fan.
Well,
big fan.
I don't know if I'm a big fan of Eric Prince, but as far as getting what you want done, it certainly seems effective. You know, John, we're almost out of time here for our first simulcast broadcast in the new series that you and I are doing. We've been offering it here today on YouTube, both on Crowdsource the Truth 2, and the John E. Hoover YouTube channel, and I want to thank everybody who has tuned in to watch it today. We're going to be continuing in this weekly broadcast, and from now on it's going to be available on Patreon, so people who are sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth will be able to see it there. I also hope that people will go to patreon.com/IamJohnCullen and sponsor John's Patreon page. I think I'm stating the obvious to say I couldn't do these broadcasts without John, and John has done such a tremendous amount of work over the past 2 years, literally revealing more evidence than the FBI, the Las Vegas Metro Police Department. He's been absolutely at the pinnacle of this Las Vegas investigation, frequent contributor here on Crowdsource the Truth. I always enjoy having you on, John, even when we're coming under fire from malicious social engineers and people who seem to think that because I'm Jewish, they can write that in the comments and it means something. But I think that the overwhelming majority of people who have seen these broadcasts are really getting a lot of valuable information from them. And this is an incident, really, maybe even more than 9/11. For whatever reason, so many people have woken up as a result of this Las Vegas shooting and your research. So I want to thank you for doing that, John. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I want to thank everybody for watching us. Is there anything you want to add before we end the program?
Yeah, just real quick. I think that the awareness of this is starting to pick up some steam, and it's strange that it's happening 2 years later. But maybe on the 2-year anniversary, you know, people kind of refocused their attention for 5 minutes and said, hey, yeah, you know, that never did make any sense, because in just the last couple days, the material that I have been producing, the graphics, was picked up by Alex Jones's InfoWars. And they have started to use some of the material and gave a shout out to the John E. Hoover channel just this week. So very grateful to Alex, to Greg Reese, to the guys over there for the shout out at InfoWars. And if you want to go check it out, watch the David Knight show from October 3rd and watch the October 1st show from Alex, where he and Greg Reese are talking about Las Vegas, and they reference the John E. Hoover material. So very grateful for that, and you know, stay tuned. Who knows? Who knows?
Excellent. Well, good going there, getting onto InfoWars, and even if people have issues, it seems whoever you are, somebody has an issue with you. I respect Alex Jones. That guy has built up a huge network from being a single guy speaking into a microphone on a public access station. Even if you disagree with what he says, that's a hell of an achievement to be able to do that. So good going getting onto the broadcast there. Hopefully that helps pick up the subscribership on the John E. Hoover YouTube channel. Thanks everybody for watching right now. I'll see everybody on Sunday for Sunday with Charles. Have a great weekend.